today, I also would like to introduce to you our experts and our guests, Andrea Homolenko and Carolin König. So I would like to, first of all, pass the word to Carolin so that she can briefly introduce herself and tell a few words to all of us that gathered here today. So Carolin, how are you doing today?
Great, thank you. Also, welcoming you to our webinar today. So Andre offered us from his side and from his company to introduce to us some top secrets about successful application documents. And I'm really curious as well what we can learn today from this side and from Andre. So a very warm welcome from our side, from the mentoring program, and I'm really excited. Thank you.
So guys, I'm very excited about our webinars today because we prepared a lot of useful and important materials how to prepare your perfect document. From my side, I also would like to ask you to briefly introduce yourself into the comments, into the Zoom chat. Just write your names, where are you from, what's maybe your dream company in consulting on other fields, like how many cases you already solved. So give us just a brief information about yourself, okay? Yes, as I mentioned before, I'm Alessa Kim, client manager at Consulting Masters. And in case you have any questions, you know what to do. Because in the end of this webinar, we're going to do a Q&A session.
Thank you for your introduction. Very warm welcome to our webinar. And I want to say thank you to Carolina for organizing it and making this happen. I'm really very much excited to give this webinar together with you. So can I kindly ask you maybe just to turn on your cameras so that we can better see each other and interact with each other. So don't just sit in front of the webinar. Also put your questions in front of the chat. I will try to do all my best in the coming hour to give you a very important tips about how to write your CV, how to write your motivational letter, how to basically apply. So basically, I used to work consulting for more than 6 years. I was also part of the recruiting team, selecting candidates in DACH region, in MENA region in the Middle East, and even in Eastern Europe when I was on the projects over there. And afterwards, I moved back to Europe. Since 3.5 years, I've been living in Switzerland, very close to Bern. 3 years ago, I founded my own company, Consulting Masters. And so far, we helped 592 people to get a job at one of the most prestigious companies worldwide. You can see the companies we've been working with, and we are basically covering almost every country. And even last week, one of our mentees just received a job offer from Accenture Strategy in Zurich office. And yeah, we are very proud about it. So this is just to give you a little bit of background. And I used to be a mentor in the mentoring program headed by Carolin König. And I've been mentoring 3 mentees. And by the way, also one of them broke into consulting and is going to start an internship with McKinsey in Panama. So very much excited about this. So let's go to the content part today and speak more about what we are going to discuss. So the following structure, we want to start with the typical structure of a strong CV and a cover letter. And I also want to provide you with very good examples and bad examples. So what are top mistakes to avoid and what are the good things which you need to implement? Like I want to give you the best practices, how to write really good CVs and cover letters to make sure that you stand out of the crowd and that you are going to be invited to an interview. And then also you will have a chance to discuss tips and tricks and ask your question during the interactive session at the end of the webinar. What are the companies typically looking at your CVs? Whether it is for an internship or especially for a full-time position, they look for these 5 typical criteria. Typically, they sort out the people according to the big brand name employers or schools. Luckily, you are studying at the University of St.Gallen, so you are definitely having a major business school on your list. They are also looking at the academic performance or your GPA, especially if you are among the best in your cohort, like top 5, top 10 to 20% of the class. They also looking sometimes for a high standardized test scores scores in math, and evidence of your leadership and people skills experience. Even if you are students, you might be engaged in some extracurricular activities. So definitely point this out to them. And then if they're looking into their achievements in high career, so it's basically proportional to the length of their career. And what you really need to know is that whenever you apply at the screening phase, especially in consulting, 90% of the applicants get rejected at the CV screening stage. So it's really important to make sure that your CV looks very strong on the paper and that you successfully pass through the screening stage. So would you like to know how to write a proper CV? Just put yes in the chat and we will continue. I just want to give you a few tips here. Try to make sure that your resume fits on one page and always try to use a conventional font, either Times New Roman or Arial with a font size of 11 or more. And feel free to play with margins within the reason. Then make sure that all buckets start with an action verb if you are describing your professional experience. As for the education, try to demonstrate the personal impact of the candidate whenever possible, or also try to highlight that you have been among top percentile of the class. And generally speaking, your resume should be consisting of the personal information, education section, work experience, extra numerical achievements, and additional skills and interests. This is like a worldwide benchmark which applies to Switzerland and all other geographies worldwide. In the leadership, try to make sure that the bullet points demonstrate a balanced mix of the following skills: your problem-solving skills, your analytical skills, your leadership potential, entrepreneurial drive, or personal impact. And for every experience, the candidate's role or degree, their organization, and dates are clearly listed, and the organization or degree is described in one line. If you already have some relevant work experience, then you can start with work experience. If you only studying at the moment, then start with an education section. And what are the important things in your education section? So make sure that your GPA is listed for every degree unless it is extremely low. Of course, you need to try to highlight your high GPAs. Also, something which is very important are your awards or scholarships or study grants that could be listed. So, for example, I used to receive a scholarship from the ARD, which is a German academic exchange service. So I highlighted it because it also meant that I was among top 5% of the students in my cohort, because only the best students have received it. So if you have these sort of the awards or scholarships or distinctions, make sure that you put them also on your tabled CV. And then the last but not least, dissertation or thesis is listed if it's relevant to the topic summarized in the extremely simple terms. So here you can also see the example. And by the way, feel free to put your questions or comments into the chat so that we can get back to them later on. And bear in mind, we will also at the end of the webinar share some gift materials with you, and you will receive this presentation, some tutorials, and some other bonuses in the follow-up email so that you can refer to them later on. Okay, if education section is clear, then let's move on to the professional experience. So as for your work experience, this section typically lists about 2 to 4 most relevant experience. I mean, you are students, so mostly you don't have that many number of internships, but I would strongly encourage you to do internships during your studies, because when I was studying, I was focusing heavily on doing the internships. I used to complete 6 internships during my studies because I wanted to figure out what kind of work I really want to do after my graduation from studies. And therefore, I even accumulated about 2 years of practical experience during the internships, even during my college days. And each experience should be detailed using either 3 or 5 bullet points. On the next page, I also want to show you how basically professional experience could look like. And I just want to highlight to you. So try to make sure that you are describing in your professional experience, for example, in your internships, not just the process, not just what have you been doing, not only your to-dos, but what is even more important is your impact that you have created. And impact could be described if you fill it with facts, figures, numbers, percentages, or monetary value. So just to give you an example from here, the person is describing his experience at Reverse Logistic Group in Munich, Germany, where he or she has been working as an external strategy consultant. So build product strategy for a web platform to manage the recycling of e-waste products by tech companies in Europe after gathering requirements from 10 plus clients. Or the last bullet point is design business models with sustainable strategies for Nike and Sony aim to reduce CO2 equivalent impact by 50% by 2022 and increase profit margins by 10%. So as you see, the candidate is describing not only what he or she has been doing, like design the business model, but he or she had also described what was the impact. So like CO2 equivalent impact reduced by 50% by 2022 and increased profit margin by 10%. This makes it very measurable and very clear to the recruiter that you are very much results oriented. So therefore, take it as a tip, take it as an advice to go directly in this way. Describe both the process, but by far more important also the outcome, the impact of your activity. And make sure that your bullet point is either 1 line or 2 lines maximum. So don't make it 3 lines or 4 lines because no one will read this actually. And therefore, I strongly recommend you to stick to that format because that will help you to shape your CV. So if you are focused more on the impact, it will clearly make a huge difference in your CV. And by the way, there is also a quick question. Should we also include the current internship that we are doing? As I recently started my internship, how to specify the impact when I haven't done much in my internship? Yes, so the answer is yes, please include the current internship, but you can basically simply write that you have been, for example, you've analyzed the 20 million plus market of automotive spare parts and identified 4 customer groups. So you've described and quantified what have you been doing without quantifying the outcome, the impact, because it's clear that you are still in this internship and that the internship is ongoing. So therefore, you can just stick to that format. Well, let's now talk about extracurricular achievements. Because many of you are engaged in some clubs, maybe in consulting club or entrepreneurial club or marketing club or whatsoever. And these are exactly the things that you can highlight also as your voluntary or extracurricular activities and achievements. So this section also typically consists of 1 to 3 experiences. So for example, when I was a student, I was also part of the students' parliament in my university. And I also was socially engaged very heavily. I became a president of, I think it was a Health and Social Security Commission in my university in Kiev. And that was also one of the leadership experience that I could put on my CV because it was a really good experience. But just make sure that each experience is detailed using 1 or 2 bullet points on your CV. An example of good activities could be either leading a university club or leading a team at a case competition or a leading role in charity or a leading role in political party, founding a side business or maybe a startup with your friends, building an app or website or physical project, or working a part-time job to finance your studies, or holding editorial roles in academical journals, or being invited to speak at conferences, or acting as a board member for a charity or for a company. So if you do have this kind of experience, you may put it in an extra section, which is called extracurricular activities or achievements or leadership experience. And this is very important because not everyone is engaged in this kind of activity. So this clearly distinguishes you from the mass and helps you to point out the important aspects of your CV. That's an example of the leadership activity. So, for example, that person was head of cultural department, and even just pay attention. Even in that case, he or she described this experience as a work experience. So he led a team of 40 people to manage company level events with 0.5 million budget, where she planned and managed quarterly outings for an offsite of 1,000 people. So you see, it very much looks very familiar to the way you've described the bullet points in your professional experience. So apply the same logic also for your leadership and extracurricular activities. We also have a question from Pablo. Would you put a part-time job in the work experience part or extracurricular experiences part? It actually depends what kind of the job and what was the purpose of it. I personally, since I had the leadership and extracurricular activities in my university as I was president of the commission, I had this section separately. And my part-time job, especially if it was related to the field of my studies, I put it as a work experience. As a work experience, I mean, for example, if you are studying business or economics, and if you are working in a business sphere for SBB, for example, you are doing an internship or part-time, or you're working on some business-related activity, then you can put it as a work experience. But if, for instance, you're just working part-time as a barman to finance your studies, or as I also used to work, I was like a safeguard in the swimming pool during my studies to help me to finance the studies. That, of course, if you put it, it's probably like your extracurricular activities. We also have the next question from Pier Francesco. Would you mention it if you were invited to the talent pool of the company after an internship or being a month of 10% interns? If yes, in which part? Yeah, definitely. Pier Francesco, very good point. Just do this. Mention it directly in your work experience. So, for example, you may put as last bullet point, you've described in the first 2 or 3 bullet points what you have been doing in the internship in this company and what you have achieved. So basically your impact. And then as the last bullet point, you may mention that you may write something like invited to the company's talent pool for being among top 10% of the interns. And put like an award signal to that. Now the column is coming with, it is typically the very last one, with additional skills and interests that you may be mentioning on your CV. And this section typically covers language skills that you might be having, IT skills and hobbies. And it may include the programming languages if you know any of them, for example, Python or Java, HTML, CSS. And hobbies is optional. It's up to you whether to have it or not. But through your interests, you can always distinguish yourself from the other candidates and also try to quantify everything. So, for example, that candidate wrote that he was a lead singer and percussionist in band since 9 years. He enjoys mountain biking and wildlife photographer and personal motivator and coach. And I'm pretty sure that almost in every interview or in every second interview, especially if the interviewer likes music as well, the interviewer would ask the candidate more about his hobby of playing in a band. And this is a huge advantage for you because it might help you to establish really very well connection with an interviewer, which will ultimately help you to receive a job offer at this company. So my personal advice is definitely mention your hobbies in this field. So I was actually mentioning, for example, during my studies, I went for a walk from Paso to Linz, and the distance was about, 100 kilometers. So I managed to do that in 2 days, and it was extremely exhausting if you are just walking for 50 minutes, not running, but just really walking. And like in almost every interview, when I was applying for consulting in my young days, 10 years back, I was asked this question, like, why did you do that? It was crazy for many people. So definitely mention your personal interests, skills, ID skills, publications, languages, your proficiency. That's a good point to put some more personal context about yourself on the paper. Okay. Now let's talk about cover letter, how to write the proper cover letter. Bear in mind, again, that it should be 1 page. Ideally, I would even say it should be like 3/4 of the page. So the shorter it is, the better it is. And bear in mind that, of course, apart from typical formatting like Times New Roman or Arial font size 11 and playing with margins, bear in mind one very interesting thing, that in the cover letter, it's not about duplicating what is already stated on your CV. It's all about writing a very good motivation. And your cover letter should basically answer 2 key questions. Number 1, why you want to work for this company. And number 2, why I, as a recruiter reviewing your cover letter, should hire you, basically, or should invite you for an interview. Why do I need to invite exactly you and not someone else, for example? These are the 2 main questions that should be answered in your cover letter. Now let's basically go section by section, and I also want to give you some very important advice here. So the very first section, of course, like on the top, you have like on the left side, you have the data about the company and their recruiter. It's always very good if you can find the name of the recruiter address so that you can basically specify to whom you are addressing this cover letter. And then on the right side, you have like your data, your contact details. Then you can also introduce the subject, like, for example, application for an internship position at SBB or Credit Suisse or whatsoever. And then you started like, dear recruiting, dear members of the recruiting team, or dear Miss Schmidt, or dear Mr. Jones, whatsoever. And then in the first paragraph should actually contain the answers like why this industry, why the company XYZ. And I want to give you a very practical tip how to write this very first paragraph. Make sure, for example, for the company X, that you have both professional and both personal reason in order to work there. So what I mean by this is, for example, you read a study or you read a publication that was completed by this company, or there was something that you found literally very interesting about it. Maybe you found something in the news and you can relate to it moving on. And that could be one reason on the professional side. And then on the personal side, it's always even better. For example, if you have already connected with the people. So if you have attended, for example, a workshop or a webinar or a live simulation, or if you simply have friends, or if you know some people who are working in this company, and if you, before applying, have spoken with them, have reached out to them, and if you understood the culture of the company and gain the important insights through that conversation. So, for example, you may write something like, last semester, I attended case competition workshop with McKinsey. And after having a conversation with your colleague, Bob Bryan and Charlize Theron, I was truly amazed about the company's culture, its drive for achieving and blah, 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 blah. So therefore, I am very much motivated to become a part of your team, and would like to apply for an internship or for a junior consultant position, whatsoever. And then you wrap it up in the first paragraph. Then the following paragraphs typically represent the question, why should I invite you? So you need to provide 3 reasons why you are the perfect candidate. And I also want to give you the hint how to provide those reasons. I would strongly recommend you to use this framework, H plus star plus L framework. So this framework, I just want to explain this to you. You need to H plus star plus L. H stands for headline, then S stands for situation, T for task or objective. Sometimes it's complete challenge. Then A for approach, R for results or outcomes, and L for learnings. So, for example, just to give you an example, this H plus star plus L framework. So, for example, you have a paragraph where you want to say that I'm very good for this position due to my analytical skills. Let's imagine. So you mention analytical skills at the very beginning of the paragraph and you mark it as bold. And then it's like your headline now. And then you need to tell a story. How did you showcase your analytical skills? And in one sentence, you describe the situation. In the next sentence, you describe what was your task or objective or maybe challenge that you faced. In the third sentence, you describe how did you approach it? How did you solve it? Like, what was the method that you used? Or how did you proceed? How did you structure that task? How did you cope with that? Then in the next sentence, you describe the results. So for example, what was the outcome of your activity? And again, you try to quantify your outcome in order to showcase the impact. So you put again, facts, figures, numbers, percentages, or monetary value to highlight it even more. And then in the next one, in the last sentence in the paragraph, you highlight what have you learned out of this experience and why do you think it's now relevant for your future employee. And I just want to give you an example. That's what I'm going to write, for example, in one of the paragraphs. So I think that leadership is one of the qualities that I can contribute to the company. And then I would say leadership skills and mark it bold. Then I will use this H plus star plus L framework and now explain you the example. So in the first sentence, I would write, 4 years back, I used to lead the project team involved with 20 different stakeholders on the project for Ministry of Transportation in the Middle East. And my challenge was that the project itself was not aligned because of different agendas of the stakeholders. My approach was to organize a 2 days closed workshop where besides the closed doors, we gathered all the 20 different stakeholders to align on the same vision. And the outcome was that after a very intense discussion, we were finally able to get aligned on the same vision and finally started working as a one team. As an outcome, we were able to deliver the project both in time, quality, and budget. And the web application was presented to the Crown Prince of Dubai, to the ruler of the country. What I learned from this situation was that the alignment and handling the different stakeholders is one of the key success factors for every project. And this is what I'm trying to do for every client assignment that I get. So now I just gave you an example of how I would describe my leadership skills in one paragraph. That's exactly what I have been referring to. You may now see like analytical problem solving skills or interpersonal and teamwork skills or leadership. Let's look, for example, into analytical problem solving skills. The first sentence is basically describing the situation and provides some facts, figures, numbers. So I was nominated to firm's name leadership to support a national regulatory authority for evaluation of stimulus packages worth 600 million towards business impact due to COVID-19. So that was like the situation plus the objective. Then I conducted primary and secondary research towards the development of an evaluation framework that was used to assess these stimulus packages based on their ease of implementation and impact potential. Yeah, for these efforts, I was recognized by the CEO that was awarded to top 15% of employees of the company. That's the previous two sentences simply described the approach and the results. Like this recognition by the CEO is a clear outcome. Beyond my professional experience, I earned 9.18 GPA with a merit scholarship in a case-based program of study that was not only analytical by nature, but also helped to build presentation and problem-solving qualities. So, and that's like, so what? So what type? So what are the benefits this candidate can bring to the company? All right, I also see the question like, would you actually include those titles in bold, like analytical problem solving? Yes. Exactly. So that's specifically what I told you, that for these three paragraphs, it's like second, third, and fourth paragraph in your cover letter, you may start them by highlighting the skills that you are having and that you are adding up to the company and make them bold. Okay, so these are the examples. I hope that they are clear. Okay, now another question, I'm just looking into the chat. I knew these three parts, why me, why the company, why I fit into the company can bring. Is there industry part more important than fit with the company? No, industry part is just generally, it merges together with the company part. So, for example, I don't know, you might be very fond of pharma industry or of financial services or of private equity or consulting. And together with the specific company from that particular industry, you may describe your both professional and personal motivation. So I would combine this all into one paragraph. And then the only thing that is left, so after you have, in your very first paragraph, you have provided the motivation why you want to work for this company. In your second, third, and fourth paragraph, you have provided the motivation why they should look at your profile and invite you for an interview. And then there is just a small final paragraph left. It's just a summary before you end up your cover letter. And in this summary, you simply summarize everything before mentioned and state it even more clear. So you might be writing something like, due to my high motivation, developed emotional resilience, combination of hard skills and soft skills that I was able to develop over 2 years or over 3 internships and, studies in the university. I would like to combine my experiences and skills for the benefit of your company and your clients. So, for example, if you are applying to a service provider, like a consulting firm or whatsoever. So you need to express that you would like to combine all what you have mentioned before for the benefit of the company. And therefore, you are looking for having a chance for a personal interview with the members of the recruiting team. And then at the very end, sincerely yours, your name and your surname. So that's how to conclude your cover letter. Brief, try to be specific. Don't write too long cover letters, like more than 1 page is absolutely no-go. It's better to stick to 1-page format. The section now, for example, for you, Jonas, like why the firm X, you can basically use this kind of things over there. I would like to work for the company X for 3 reasons. Or I'm particularly attracted towards firm X for a few reasons. Or there are several reasons why I would be excited to join firm X. And then you might provide either 1, 2, or 3 reasons. It's typically should be a combination, as I mentioned, of your professional reasons and your personal reasons. Especially if you were attending an event with the this company. That's a really huge advantage if you were able to connect to people. So make sure that you pay special attention to the networking during the events. And then you may distinguish whenever you describe your motivation with the key buzzwords like first, second, or third, or finally. And this paragraph should mention the current or former employers from company X that the candidate has worked with. So for example, I'm particularly interested in the company X because it provides a great opportunity to have a global impact while solving some of the most interesting problems faced by leading institutions around the world. The opportunity to benefit from firms' international opportunities and reputable firms' culture demonstrates companies' excellence in consulting world as a firm by being recognized among the top 5%, the top 5 of the world's 2021 World Consulting 50 ranking. I'm eager to be a part of an international network, learn from experience of the firm's members, and contribute to the impact that firms brings to all clients. So these are just the examples how you could phrase that part of the first paragraph when you are describing your motivation to work for a specific company. I also want to share some of the useful gifts with you. Today, you can book free call with one of our experts. Here, it's absolutely free of charge for you so that you can have a better understanding of your current situation and get a really tailored advice on where do you stand at the moment and how to get there where you would like to go. We will be also sharing with you the checklists for a perfect CV and the cover letter. And I have a special prize for you. We wanted to share with you also one video of our recent client who managed to get an offer. It's a very prestigious company in the Middle East, and he wants to share his personal experience. Alessia, and with this, I gladly pass the word to you, and I'm more than happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Andrea. So it's a question from Florian.
I'm Pier Francesco. I'm currently in Frankfurt, in Germany, doing an internship at American Express in the business development part. So that's why I'm in the office right now. My question is a more general one. Why can you recommend a career start in consulting at all? And based on what factors should we choose a specific company? So why should I decide for McKinsey and not for Roland Berger, or vice versa? What can you recommend here?
Thank you very much for this question. Well, I will share with you my personal experience. During my studies, when I was studying in Germany and in Ukraine, I completed 6 internships, because I didn't know what kind of job I want to do afterwards. So it was like, for me, a little bit trial and error. And I found, for example, that the internships in IT or in tech sector were extremely boring for me. That was a clear no-go. I found out that big automotive companies were too bureaucratic and that there was no dynamics over there. I found that banking was just too much with numbers, and investment banking was even more with numbers. So, and I am more like a personal type. So I really value personal creations. And then I made an internship at Roland Berger. And just imagine that in my second project on the internship at RB, I was working on helping a country to host the Winter Olympic Games. I was like 21 years old during an internship. And I was already working with ministers to help the country host its Winter Olympic event. The event, which was later on seen by more than 1 billion people. So I was completely flashed and completely amazed about this opportunity. So what always inspired me in consulting was the type of challenges that I used to work always high-level individuals with board members or board -1 level. I was always challenged. It was very interesting in most of the cases. Of course, it was also very hard because the long working hours not need to underestimate. And there are always the downsides of consulting. But to me personally, especially after the graduation, when you are not 100% sure what exactly would you like to do, which industry or which function to focus on, consulting gives you an opportunity to have a very diversified experience. And there is also a good saying that in 2 years in consulting, you will probably see even more than in 7 years in the industry. So therefore, I consider consulting a very good option straight away after the university or business school, whether it's bachelor, master's, or MBA degree, in order just to launch your career. And also for me personally, I was traveling the world when it was still possible. Like I was based out of Munich, but I used to work on the projects from France, Benelux countries, Switzerland, DACH region, Austria, Eastern Europe, Russia, and the Middle East, where I also spent 1.5 years roughly. And I was very much excited. And last but not least, thanks to consulting, my salary also grew from 60,000 euros back in 2012, when I was just getting an offer in consulting, to 150K in Swiss francs when I was joining SBB 4 years back from now. It's like 2.5 times monetary increase within just 6 years. And tell me another example where it's possible. But at least at that time, that was a clear motivation for me. So that's to answer your first question. And your second question, like which company to choose, I didn't follow the brands. I always followed my gut feeling. So I had an opportunity to join one of the MBB companies, but I decided to go for RB because I was very good with the people, especially with the partner. And therefore, if you trace my career back, I always tried to follow my good gut feeling. So it's not about, more or less, they all are good. It doesn't matter whether it's McKinsey, BCG, Roland Berger, Strategy, and König, or whatsoever. They all are really good. It's just your gut feeling. Where would you feel yourself more comfortable? And that's why whenever you are going to the interviews, you are also assessing which of the companies you really like. I hope that it answers your question.
Yes, thanks a lot.
I see the next question from Manjit.
Hello everyone, my name is Manjit. I'm doing my master's in mobility engineering. I'm currently in Milan, Italy. Also, I'm doing an internship at ANS. I'm working on a smart road infrastructure. My question is, when we have something questionable in a CV, which can be explained in a cover letter normally, but when we are following the H plus star plus L framework, where should we place this explanation of something in our CV in more detailed way in our cover letter?
What do you mean? Give me an example.
For example, if I have a career break in between of my education, or if I have some like 1 or 2 years of pause in my career, like how there should be a certain explanation that has to be given for the interviewer, right?
Why do you want to give an explanation or justify yourself?
Because like it would be odd in my profile without any explanation, just to have some break or something like that in my, I feel that. So
I would say that this is your personal feeling, and I would not recommend you to justify yourself. You don't need to justify yourself. I also had breaks in my career, and I took, for example, sabbatical for 6 months, and I was not working and I was traveling the world, and there is nothing to justify. We all are human beings. So forget about justify. Like, don't be a victim. You are not the victim, you are a creator. So therefore, there is nothing to justify.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Manjit, just a small tip for you. I think that you need to work on your confidence and improve it. Like, you need to become more self-confident. And this will ultimately impact all the different spheres in your life, including your career and including monetary rewards. I mean, we would be very glad to help you with that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Manjit. Then the next question is coming from Jonas.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. I'm majoring in marketing, ISG, in St.Gallen, and I'm from the French-speaking part of Switzerland, and I like to work in the which industry, ideally in marketing as well, like brand management or product management. And yeah, so for the design of resume or the CV, I feel like now there's a trend of futuristic or like icons and a lot of like nicely designed resume, but I feel like this is just overwhelming and doesn't help to read the resume. So my question was more, do you feel like the old school Word type, like kind of Word, like 2 columns, like date and just like explanation is still relevant, or would you go for some nicely designed resume?
Unless it's explicitly mentioned somewhere that this is like super creative job in terms of marketing or whatsoever promotions, then in that case, I would go with something fancy. But otherwise, I would say like 98% of the other cases, I would simply go with a straight resume, because it also shows your talent to be concise and to the point. So therefore, why to risk? That's the safest. And if you really have to put something on your CV and make it in a very nice format and all the bullet points, all the sections are aligned, everything that we just discussed, you have already won half of the battle.
Thank you.
All right, hope it helps. Then Nadia Egli is the next one.
I'm Nadia. I'm studying at HSG. I'm doing my master's. Yeah, and I just thought it would be very interesting to upgrade my application documents. My question was about the work certification, because I heard so many different things about this. There are people who say, yeah, just put one or put the last one that you have, and then withhold the other ones. Then there are people who say, no, really put all the certificates that you have into your application. And I just wanted to hear your opinion about this.
How many do you have?
So I guess around 4 or 5 relevant ones, and then some older ones from former student jobs that are not, really important for my career now.
Yeah, so we are talking about these certificates or Zeugnisse. I would probably put them all in one file, actually.
Yeah, that's what I did so far.
But, it's not that relevant. So no one, when they are meeting their decision whether to invite you or not, they're not looking at your certificates. So It's like a pro forma, more or less.
Okay, thank you so much.
No need to be worried about it. Yeah, sure. All right, cool. And then Anna, what?
My question regarding the balance and motivation letter. So how much should I write a standardized one, and how much should be playful and make it fun for the recruiter to read?
What do you mean by standardized and fun?
So standardized would be applying frame possible that the cover letters sound the same to the recruiters.
Seems like Anna's connection is not very well at the moment, but yeah, at least from what I can see in the chat is, this question about what is the good balance between writing a standardized cover letter and making it fun to read for the recruiter. Yeah, again, similar to the question brought by Jonas about the creativity in terms of the CV formatting, I would rather go for the standardized format, not just to risk too much, because the recruiters, they are always going through those documents without having that much time. So they only do have about 1 or 2 minutes actually to screen the documents. And if they like it, if they find some buzzwords in your CV, in the cover letter, then you get a chance to be reviewed even more. Otherwise, you are just outscreened. So in that case, I would not really put too much effort to make your cover letter be fun, because it might be fun for one recruiter, but might not be funny to the other recruiter. That's why I would say that the structure and the way we presented it to you are the most promising for your applications. I hope, Anna, that you might be watching this recording later on, and that you can still fill the gap. And by the way, I would, ladies and gentlemen, strongly recommend you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to visit our website, in order to stay tuned, because especially on the YouTube channel, you will find quite a lot of very interesting content on how to write CV, how to write cover letter, how to do networking, how to prepare yourself for the interviews. Seems like we have discussed most of the topics, and I really want to say a huge thank you to Carolina for organizing and helping us to host this webinar. I hope that it was very useful for you. And we are looking towards to hearing from you back very soon. Feel free to book the session with Alessa if you have something to discuss, and we are more than happy to help you on your way in your careers. Thank you very much from my side. Merci vielmals.
Thank you very much, Andre. And this was really great. I think we all could learn a lot, and thank you for sharing your experience and your helpful insights, and also in your role as mentor in our program. So thank you for your time as well. Also to Alessia, of course.
It's my pleasure. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care. All the very best from Bern to wherever you are. And enjoy the summer, your holidays, and take care of your careers. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys for coming. See you next time. Bye.